Welcome to this webinar series on San Antonio's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. This series has been developed by the Office of Sustainability to support the launch and implementation of climate action within the city government, and it provides focus burst on key topics related to climate action within San Antonio. This is the third session in the series and focuses on understanding San Antonio's greenhouse gas emissions. In other sessions, we talk about the impact of climate change on San Antonio and the broader value to the city by taking action on reducing emissions and addressing climate hazards. This session provides an overview to the key sources of greenhouse gas emissions globally and in San Antonio, gives more detail on the city's targets for reducing emissions, and highlights examples of key policies and programs to help us take action. Greenhouse gases are part of the Earth's atmosphere and natural systems. When energy is being absorbed by the planet's surface and reflected back into space, greenhouse gases absorb the heat and prevent it from escaping our atmosphere, contributing to what's called the greenhouse effect. Throughout the history of the planet, the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has changed. The challenge we face now is that concentrations in the atmosphere are rising due to human activity. A small change in the global average temperature can have a major impact on natural systems, including storms, rainfall patterns, extreme heat, the timing of seasons, and even our food supply system. The global scientific community has identified a global average temperature increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius, or about 3 degrees Fahrenheit, as the safe upper limit for global temperature increase that will avoid the most devastating effects of future climate change. And currently, with the policies we have in place as a global community to limit greenhouse gases, we're on pace to a future temperature change of about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius by 2100. Obviously, this is nowhere near 1.5, but more and more national governments, local governments, businesses, and other organizations are committing to reduce emissions to near zero levels that will help limit global temperature increase to 2 or even 1.5 degrees. Greenhouse gases emitted due to human activity are called anthropogenic or man-made greenhouse gases. These gases are primarily emitted as a result of fossil fuel and industrial processes due to electricity and heat production, energy use in buildings, transportation, and other industrial uses. You'll be able to see the breakdown for COSA on the next slide. Some greenhouse gases are naturally occurring in the atmosphere, like carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. Natural sources of these emissions include forest fires, oceans, wetlands, and volcanoes, but this makes up a small percentage of global emissions. Some gases have essentially no natural sources, like fluorinated gases, also known as F gases. They are manufactured for a variety of human purposes like electrical insulators, or they may be the byproduct of aluminum production. You don't have to know all of the gases, but it is important to know that each one has its own global warming potential. Each one has a different impact on the greenhouse effect. For example, an F gas like SF6 is 23,000 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at trapping heat. Methane is about 30 times more powerful than CO2. Another way to look at this is to think about your yard or your garden at home. If you want trees or produce to grow faster, there's a variety of options of fertilizers that you can use. Compost, worm castings, poultry manure, alfalfa meal, all have different properties that will affect the growth rate of a plant. The same applies to gases. Each one has different properties that will allow it to trap more or less heat, thereby affecting the greenhouse effect and accelerating the global temperature increase. When focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's important to not only look at the volume of gases emitted, but also the power of those gases in contributing to climate change. A tiny leak of gas like SF6 or methane can have an enormous impact. San Antonio's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, or CAAP, provides a detailed inventory of the city's greenhouse gas emissions, including emissions from municipal activities, as well as those from activities by the wider community. In 2019, San Antonio emitted 17.3 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, meaning there was a mixture of gases emitted in 2019, and all were converted to a standard metric, the CO2 equivalent, based on their global warming potential. Think about the Alamo Dome. The volume of this gas, 17.3 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent, is about the same as would fill the Alamo Dome with regular air 32,000 times. And that's just for 1 year. Key sources of emissions are similar to the global sources we just mentioned, such as buildings, transportation, industries, solid waste, and fugitive emissions from the natural gas system. Comparing the different inventories or footprints from municipal and community sources illustrates the impact of buildings and transportation to the city's overall inventory. Collectively, those two account for more than 80% of the community's emissions. The city government is taking strong action to reduce its own emissions, but you can see how crucial it is to work with the community to reduce emissions beyond our control. We only make up 1.5% of the total greenhouse gas inventory. Even if COSA achieves carbon neutrality, it still isn't enough to meet San Antonio's overall goals. We must set the example and help the community reduce their own carbon emissions at the same time. So, where's the city on its carbon neutral pathway? The city started tracking its emissions inventory in 2013. As we can see here on the graph, since coming down from a peak in 2014, San Antonio's emissions are pretty much flat. We did have a minor increase of 0.1% from 2016 to 2019, which is due mainly to an increase in population. The good news here is that community-wide emissions per capita actually decreased by 4% over this period. Even though there are more people, we are doing a better job at curbing energy consumption. A great start, but we still have a long way to go. So, what's the trend and where do we need to be? You can see here on the blue line that anticipates the pathway to 2030 and beyond. This requires an annual decrease of about 4 to 5%, therefore doing what we've done already over and over. While the quick actions like a COSA energy conservation policy may be easy to pick off, achieving deeper cuts such as zero net energy building codes for new buildings takes more time and more effort. This is a call for all city departments and the community, private sector, academia, everyone to work together. The pathway set out in the CAAP shows how we can get to a nearly 40% reduction by 2030, 70% reduction by 2040, and carbon neutral or 100% reduction by 2050. But there's not one department or one organization that can do it alone. The city's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, SA Climate Ready, sets out nearly 90 strategies for the municipal government and community to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of future climate change. As the organization that serves San Antonio residents, there's a lot on our shoulders. This includes near-term strategies focused on improving the energy efficiency of buildings, switching to less carbon-intensive fuel sources, reducing waste, incentivizing the use of public transit, and promoting sustainable land use and planning policies. Longer-term strategies include decarbonizing energy industries and electrifying buildings to take advantage of a greener grid, developing a zero-waste economy, accelerating the use of electric vehicles, and regenerating ecosystems. You can also access the CAAP online through this link, or by searching for SA Climate Ready, and you can also learn more about what COSA is doing at www.sasustainability.com. This session delved into details on the city's greenhouse gas emissions, commitment to reduce emissions, and pathway to carbon neutrality. Other sessions in the series provide more information on the climate impacts the city faces today and in the future, the value of taking action, the city's commitment to climate equity, and how all city staff and departments can contribute to moving climate action forward in San Antonio. Thank you very much. For more information on this or any other session, please contact the Office of Sustainability in general through sustainability@sanantonio.gov, or you can directly contact Murray Myers, the Special Project Manager with the Office of Sustainability.